Welcome back to Everything EOS, the longest running EOS podcast. Thank you for showing up, for showing your smiling face, for coming and watching us talk about everything that happened in EOS over the last week and all of the exciting news to come. Before we get started, remember, if you are coming to the Everything EOS event on May 31st, be sure to RSVP at everythingeos.io/B1June and get some of that merch at everythingeos.io. As a reminder also, please do hit the like button, hit subscribe. You can really help us out by leaving a comment on the video and of course liking the video as well. But I think what's super exciting, something coming up in the near future, is B1June. We are 2 weeks away now. It's crazy the time has flown that quickly. 2 more weeks to figure out what it is Block.One is going to come out with. What do you think, Zach?
Well, I know we have a script here, but we kind of got to go out of order because I'm in New York City still. It is Thursday morning, so Blockchain Week basically ended. We're recording this in the morning because I'm at an Airbnb and I got to check out in about an hour. But as far as B1June predictions, like you said, 2 weeks to go until B1June, and even less than that until the May 31 event, or whatever we want to call it. And that's the event we're hosting. It's at the Biergartenhaus in Washington, D.C. We do ask that you RSVP. It's the day before B1June in Washington, D.C. It's at everythingeos.io/B1June. That'll take you to the Eventbrite site. We want you to RSVP. And I'm here for Blockchain Week in New York City. Tuesday night, Carbon and Aikon sponsored an event. So I was at an EOS event around a lot of EOS people. Yeah. So I guess let me kick this off because this is like speculation we haven't heard anywhere before. And like we could talk about the wallets, EOSIO 2.0, B1's roadmap. I think that stuff's all basically confirmed. I think we're going to get all of that stuff. But this one's brand new. So I was at the Carbon event on Tuesday night, or Carbon and Aikon, and I ran into some people who knew a little bit about TomorrowBC. And for those who don't remember, TomorrowBC was the very first EOS VC announced last January. Where was that event at? That was whenever we were in Colorado, and we stayed up till at 4 a.m. to watch the live stream, and that's whenever I think they announced it at TomorrowBC.
Right, in Hong Kong, I think it was that presentation.
So what happened was they were the first EOS VC announced. They're a $50 million fund. But the reason I thought they kind of disappeared is because in May 2018 was the last time a tweet was made from their Twitter account. And then if you go to vc.eos.io, they're not listed as a VC partner on there. So I just figured, I figured maybe something happened. Maybe like it fell through, but it did not. They're working in stealth mode, and it seems like they have some big announcements coming up in the next couple weeks, possibly, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know.
Exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a B1June thing necessarily, but it could have been. Like, they're not going to tell me everything, but I keep beating around the bush here. Why don't you remind everyone why TomorrowBC is actually a really, really, really big deal?
Definitely. So I think we all have heard of Google or Alphabet, the parent company of Google, and one of the co-founders of Alphabet and Google, Eric Schmidt, is actually involved with TomorrowBC in some way. So Derek Rendell is the actual fund manager. He's sort of managing these funds on behalf of I keep getting him confused with Larry Page, but it's Eric Schmidt. He's sort of managing funds on behalf of Eric Schmidt in this TomorrowBC venture. He's also BC. It's TomorrowBC.
But he's a managing partner of both. So that's the connection. Is Derek Rendell is a managing partner of TomorrowVC, which is Eric Schmidt's basically like personal investment fund. So the same managing partner of that launched this EOS VC partner called TomorrowBC, like Tomorrow Blockchain. So it has like, it's not just that he's a managing partner of both, he's also kind of taking a play on the name. So it's like that association also. And in the original Block.One press release about this, they actually got a quote from Eric Schmidt for it, which was interesting. And that was kind of a big deal. So that's really, really big news if they have stuff that's been going on in stealth mode. We all talk about Peter Thiel. Like Peter Thiel is this big honcho in Silicon Valley. He's got Trump's ear. He's on the board of Facebook amongst other like, advisory boards for like government intelligence and all that stuff. We talk about Peter Thiel plenty. I think everyone understands the impact that he could potentially have on either B1June or just Block.One in general. He's a strategic partner. But Eric Schmidt, man, the former CEO of Alphabet and Google. And so here's where we can get into some conspiracy theories of a Block.One tie-in, but I don't want to say that this is all truth because I'm just speculating here. But so the TomorrowBC announcement was made in January 2018, and a few weeks prior to that was whenever Eric Schmidt stepped down as CEO of Alphabet. But
wow.
He continued to be on the board of Alphabet up until April 30th this year. He stepped down from the board of Alphabet. So,
April 30th, 2019, as in a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Wow,
So,
that is interesting timing, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's highly likely all of this is coincidental, and he stepped down from the Alphabet board for other reasons. If you Google the news, you could see some of the reasons in the mainstream news of why they think he stepped down. But the conspiracy theorist in me wants to believe that he stepped down because he's going to join Block.One and maybe lead their Washington, D.C. office or something. We'll see what happens with that.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine Eric Schmidt joining B1? That would be crazy.
I mean, even if it's like an advisor or something, like we don't know the behind the scenes advisors of this company. Like we don't know if Peter Thiel meets with like a board. Like we could almost assume that Block.One has a board of directors, right? They're not a public company, but they are.
To be fair, also, I mean, if you had told me, say, a week before the Peter Thiel announcement that Peter Thiel had made an investment in Block.One, and this guy was the first investor in Facebook, so he's good at picking out these early stage opportunities. One of the world's best VCs. If you had told me, hey, he's going to be joining Block.One and investing, I'd be like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, this is one of the best investors in the world. Like, why would he come over and invest over here? And the conspiracy side of my brain would have loved that. But now that it's actually real, I guess anything really is possible. I mean, maybe Peter Thiel will be the next seat on that board.
Man, we're going way off script. We're gonna have to skip some things here, Rob. But I have some more. I have some more conspiracies now that we're talking about Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt. Did you know that Peter Thiel in 2014 awarded Vitalik with a $100,000 fellowship award?
What? Vitalik Buterin from Ethereum?
Yeah. So
really, that's interesting.
I've seen speculation. Like Dan said, he's offered Vitalik a job, and we've seen all that speculation. I don't think Vitalik's joining Block.One or EOS.
I don't think so either.
But the opportunity is there. If he ever wanted to come over to the light and the good side, they would welcome him with open arms. So I guess that's it for speculation.
And speaking of Vitalik, I know that Vitalik wasn't actually at Consensus this year at Blockchain Week in New York, where you are. I thought it was kind of interesting, but I heard he had some other stories, maybe another crypto figure that you bumped into. Yeah,
so I got in, and we didn't have a hotel or this Airbnb booked until last minute. So we're all just hanging out around the hotel lobbies around Consensus, and freaking Charles Hoskinson walks in. He's like
from Cardano, ADA.
And I'm with Evan and Pete, and I'm I debated so hard if I should troll him because we had cameras, we had microphones. I was like, man, should I just walk up to him and troll him really bad? I'm wearing my EOS Io Patagonia from the hackathon. I'm completely decked out in EOS gear, and I didn't do it though. I'm not an asshole like that. He was with some guys from an STO platform, so I guess we could spill his beans. I'm not going to say who the company was, but they're talking about some STO stuff. I don't know if it has to do with Cardano, but yeah, I didn't bother him. I mean, that's
probably for the best. I mean, you gotta, as much as we love or hate Charles Hoskinson, you definitely have to respect all the people in the industry. So I think that's good that you left him alone in real life. You can send him a funny tweet, but in real life, give him some space. So that's good.
Yeah, and he's just a regular guy. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's just kind of a douchebag, I guess.
Yeah, my favorite story with him is still when we were at Token Summit. I think this was back in 2017, and he came up to the booth, and we had all these different heads. We had Dan Larimer's head and. Who else did we have? Vitalik and a bunch of people.
Yeah,
we had
we had these giant heads on a stick. So you'd if you wanted to take a selfie, you'd be holding this face up over yours, and we had this Mount Rushmore of influencers within crypto. So we had Vitalik, we had Andreas, and then we had some bad ones too. We had John McAfee, and then we had Mark Karpellis, and we had Dan Larimer, obviously, and it was like 9 a.m. The conference like wasn't even started yet, so it's just like the we're all setting up, and this guy comes up to our booth, and he's looking through all the heads, and he's like, where's mine? And your brother, Mike Finch, he's like, I'm messing this story up, but Charles Hoskinson was like holding the Dan head, this giant Dan head in his hands, and he's like, where's mine? And then your brother Mike had no idea who he was. He didn't read his lanyard or anything. He didn't recognize him. He's like, haha, you could be Dan for a day. and then, God. I mean, it was actually so much funnier in real life, and I told that story so bad, but it's just so funny because like we hear about this like rivalry that they have, and like you don't know how serious it is and if they really don't like each other, but like the fact that he was holding Dan's head, of all of the heads on the table, he's like holding it and it's like, where's mine at? Kind of like, do you know who I am? Who is that whenever he did that to the customer support of someone?
There was some customer support tweet. He was like, I'm Charles Hoskinson, founder of like Ethereum and Cardano. Like, you going to make me email the customer support? I think it was MetaMask or something. And they were like, yes, we are. Like, that's the process.
Yeah, so that was a cool experience, just kind of seeing him. I mean, there's a second, I've seen him before. I saw the Winklevoss twins. They had a bus outside of Consensus, and they're filming something.
I saw a lot of press for Gemini at the event. They had this booth called Spedin, like spend with everybody's doing this reverse letter thing ever since HODL. What was that all about? Like you could buy stuff with crypto, I guess?
Well, if you have a special promo code, which is on the back of this paper, you have an early invite code for Spedin, but that's how it works. So basically, Gemini is just like Coinbase. It's a big exchange. It's highly regulated, completely legitimate. And if you hold funds in your Gemini wallet and they don't have EOS, which is the reason I'm not completely sold on this, but I do want to try it. If you hold money in Gemini, so your Ethereum, EOS, or not Ethereum, or not EOS. So if you have like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, maybe, or they have a stable coin too. I forget what the Gemini coin's called, but they have their own stable coin. So if you hold any of this crypto or stable coin in your Gemini wallet, you could basically connect your Gemini wallet with this Spedin app, and then you can go to all of these stores. So Whole Foods, Starbucks, Home Depot, GameStop, Lowe's, a bunch of other ones.
Wow.
So if it's crypto, you designate like which ones you want to do a sell order on. If I buy $10 of Whole Foods, then it will sell $10 worth of Bitcoin, for example. Or if I have stable coins, I could use it almost like a bank. And the way it works at the cash register is like, the employee doesn't even know you're using crypto. It pulls up a barcode on your phone, and they scan that. And as far as the cash register is concerned, it's the same as a gift card.
Wow.
So that's basically how the register takes it in, is like a gift card. And
that's
it works
pretty crazy. I mean, the amount of Whole Foods and Starbucks and Home Depots and GameStops and Lowe's, all the places that are supported with this, there are tens of thousands of those stores if you add all of those up. So this is huge. I mean, when I go to Starbucks, I pay with the app, and it very much is that system. Like a barcode pops up in the Starbucks app, and you scan it, and it pays. So I can totally see that just sort of fitting in seamlessly with the process. And the baristas at Starbucks will probably just think that you're using the Starbucks app, but really you're spending crypto using, I guess, the Gemini dollar, which is their stable coin, to make that conversion happen. So that's huge.
This is huge because if you want to spend your crypto and actually use it, it's very difficult. I've bought in like lawn furniture and stuff for my house from Overstock.com. Overstock.com is like the only like big retailer that accepts crypto, and a lot of times it's only Bitcoin. But some it's weird on their site. Sometimes they let you use Shapeshift and use EOS, but whatever. But with this Gemini, I will legitimately, if I want to buy stuff, and because I hold a lot of my wealth in crypto, EOS, Bitcoin. More so than what's in my checking account, actually. And if I want to buy it, like I am going to I'm going to install the Flexa Spending app, and I'm going to have like a couple $100 of Bitcoin on there at all times, and I'm going to use it because I want to use my crypto. Like, why should I have to wait the 5 days to withdraw it from like Coinbase to my bank account just to use it for some groceries or some supplies at Home Depot? So it's just going to be like a secondary checking account for me. I'm going to have this Gemini wallet checking account essentially, and
absolutely.
Well, and I think they add EOS. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was going to say. I mean, once EOS is added on Gemini, I could totally see it being seamlessly added into this app so that then if you want to, you can spend your EOS at Starbucks or Home Depot or GameStop, wherever you may be shopping. So that's just awesome.
I guess, yeah, super awesome. And not so we're talking about the Gemini dollar here a little bit, but we have another stable coin within EOS called CarbonUSD. And I was at their event on Tuesday night, and I did not realize how big their team is. They had like, I don't want to, it was in the teens. It was in like the mid-teens of engineers at this event. So they have a legit team, and like talking to them at the event, hearing their backgrounds, what they were doing before working for Carbon, like they have a legit team. I didn't realize how big and established they were, and I didn't realize how many like partnerships and integrations they have in the works. They have a lot of stuff going on. And so
I mean, I gotta say, when I was at the EOS New York event, I think back in February or March, anyway, whenever it was earlier this year, Carbon was there and they were one of the presenters, and you could go up, they would give you 3 free Carbon and EOS links, which was pretty cool. And then you could go up, and for 2 Carbon, you could buy one of the Carbon t-shirts. But I have to say, that whole process, and this is probably thanks to EOS, but that whole process with sending a stablecoin, with sending Carbon, was totally seamless. I mean, it took me a second to make the transaction, and boom, I had my shirt right there. So very cool. Carbon.
I heard so I talked to the Carbon team, but then I also talked to like independent teams who aren't on Carbon, who are integrating with Carbon. They're basically integrating to use it as like a fiat off ramp for like non-crypto people, because really you got to go through the KYC on the Carbon app. And when I did that, I don't know the exact time frame, but I'm pretty sure my KYC got approved like within a few hours. As far as like an on and off ramp, you still have to wait the 5 days for the transfers and stuff because it's typical banking, but the KYC was quick.
Definitely. And I think as an important note, if you're not actually moving those funds to your bank account or moving funds from your bank account into Carbon, you actually don't have to do KYC. Like when I got my free tokens, you can transfer those tokens around totally seamlessly without doing KYC, as long as you're not depositing into your bank.
That's true. And if you think about like what money is, like it's one of the core aspects of it is it's a medium of exchange. So if you think about like what you do with money, is a lot of times it just goes back and forth. So I traveled here to New York with Peter Kay and Evan Schindler from Dappiness and Everything EOS, and like we're like all paying different tabs for different things. It's like I paid for this, you paid for that. So it's just like a bunch of money changing hands. And at the end of the day, we end up with like the same money we had in the first place. So if you're just using like these stable coins for like a medium of exchange, like you never really have to like withdraw them because there's always a reason to use them. Like you give them to people, or if like it's at once we're able to spend it at stores, like we're talking about with the Gemini stuff, like we might be a few years away till all of the stable coins are spendable at most retailers. But whenever that happens, like there's no reason to ever really put it in your bank account at that point if you could actually spend it or transfer it to other people, which is already available. So I'm bullish on stable coins. That's the one thing at Consensus. Last year, like it was obvious, it was the year of the stable coin. So everyone was kind of telling their stories about it. And it's true. We're trying to hit a mainstream adoption here, and to try to get people to understand crypto right away, it's very difficult. So a nice little baby step into crypto is teach them what programmable money is. So they understand what a dollar is. So you don't have to like worry about the volatility risks, but they do learn about the programmability of it. You could write it into smart contracts. You could include arbitration. All kinds of stuff that we don't really need to get into because I hope our audience kind of understands what programmable money is. But I do believe that that's going to be like commerce is going to be a lot done in stable coins, I think.
So a lot of cool people, it sounds like you met. You had Charles Hoskinson, the Carbon team, a lot of people from EOS, the Gemini twins out there. It's pretty awesome. But was there anybody else you met that you wanted to mention?
So I don't even remember the project names. I'd have to go through like the business cards I have in my like bag. But there's a lot of projects on EOS that I had no idea about. Like I feel like we're at like the forefront of this. I always think we know about all of the projects, but there's some really, really big ones that are like independently funded outside of EOS VC, and they're legitimately using EOS smart contracts to run their businesses today. And I can go into more detail another time about some of the ones I met after I follow up with them and get more details. But there is a lot of activity going on. I will tell you that. And they're projects I've never heard of. So that's bullish to me that people from industry are seeing the potential here and integrating. And some of them aren't even like, their users don't even like see the EOS stuff. They're just handling it for like an audit trail in some instances. It's really cool. I'll get into it in another episode. But besides that, I actually met, I didn't meet them for the first time, but I spent a lot of time with the Aikon team, with the, I'm going to mess her name up, Betsabi. I don't know how to say her name. I'm sorry. She's the CFO of Aikon and then Trey, who I met. I met both of them in San Fran a couple of times when I was out there. But we talked a lot about ORID. Are you familiar with ORID, Rob? You have to be.
That's what Everpedia uses, right, for their login system, where you can log in with like Telegram or your phone number or other accounts.
Yeah, so like we always talk about user onboarding and how there's so much friction with it. You have to download a wallet, you got to create a private public key, and then you got to like store your private key, and it's just like a lot for someone who's just wants to play like a tic-tac-toe game or something to ask them to do. But what ORID does is they take any OAuth sign-in, so like your Google sign-in, your Facebook sign-in, Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub.
Oh, wow.
So there's like 20 of them. And you could create an account just with one click. So like Everpedia is a good example if you want to actually see this in work. You basically go to Everpedia and you sign up using any of those social accounts. You could use I don't know if you could use GitHub on Everpedia, but you'd click like your Facebook account, and then it essentially creates like they have like this like private chain. And it basically creates an account on their private chain. And so it's like a free account, and it completely abstracts the keys and all that stuff from you so that you don't even have to have Scatter installed to create this wallet, and you're able to store tokens in that wallet. And you could eventually convert that wallet into a regular EOS wallet. And that's whenever you'd have to like install a Scatter and store your private key. But it's super like the most frictionless onboarding thing you could do. And I knew that going into that. I knew a lot about their project, and I had met Trey and the rest of his team before, but I never really asked about his background, and it was super, super, super impressive, man. He worked for Microsoft for like 10 years, and while he was at Microsoft, he worked with like all these Wall Street guys and Goldman Sachs. Like he worked directly for like these senior people at Goldman Sachs while at Microsoft. So he's like super talented. Like there's a lot of people in this space that have really, really big pedigrees. Like we talk about the really big dogs, like the Peter Thiels and Eric Schmidts that we think might be involved with Block.One and EOS and all this. But on the individual teams themselves, I mean, like just think of it, like Larry Sanger, like he founded Wikipedia. Like we have all these like big names building stuff.
Crazy. So I mean, speaking of people who are big names building stuff, they're big in the community. I heard that, is it true Nathan Rempel is joining the Liquid Apps team?
I saw you commented on it last night. So I heard about it about a week ago that he was coming on board. This is like a huge catch, man. It's like we're like forming the dream team at Liquid Apps right now.
Oh, absolutely.
With myself, Peter K, Nat, who anyone in the developer community probably knows who Nat is, but now Nathan Rempel, man, he's been on like every project. Like I feel like it's almost impossible for him to have worked for so many projects, but he has. Like he founded Generos. He developed the EOS Toolkit, if anyone's used that. He worked for Karma, Emanate. He created all the tools for airdrops, DAC. He worked with EOS Nation. He wrote the smart contract for the Air HODL, which is super cool.
Oh, is that happening? The Air HODL, you're talking about the Liquid Apps Air HODL, right? For the 10% airdrop that they're doing? When is that happening?
There should be some information on that soon. It's in the white paper. There is an air HODL, so anyone who's holding EOS will be able to get dapp tokens in an air HODL fashion. So I guess while we're on the topic, why don't we just explain what an air HODL is? Because outside of Liquid Apps, air HODL is a thing, and it's a really, really cool distribution mechanism that if you're planning to launch a token or you have some sort of dapp with the token, I'll get back to that. Like this is a great way to incentivize people to hold it. You kind of want to explain what an air HODL even is?
Yeah, so my understanding of an air HODL is basically the longer you hold your tokens and don't claim them from this air HODL pool, the more tokens you'll get over time. So for example, if I had 100 EOS, I'm going to get 10 of those actual dapp tokens. And if I hold them for, I think it's a period of 2 years, I'll get the full 10 plus my relative percentage of anybody that claimed them early. So to give you an example, let's say a year went by, I had my 5 dapp tokens vested from the air HODL. I could go ahead and pull them out and claim them, but then the other 5 that were going to be mine after another year will go back into the pool to the people that wait. So it basically incentivizes you to HODL those tokens for as long as possible to get the biggest airdrop that you can.
That's pretty much it. I don't want to say too much because I'm not at liberty to do so today. But pEOS made a big announcement though. Speaking of announcements.
Yeah, so Mel from pEOS, and pEOS, if you don't know, is trying to make private untraceable transactions on EOS, and just recently actually released their first bit of code to the Jungle testnet. So there was a lot of speculation. when there's an anonymous team and there's no code released yet, it's pure speculation on, oh, I believe the team's going to deliver. I'm going to place a bet that the team is going to deliver in the market by buying some of those tokens. But now that some of the code has been released, it seems clear that this team is actually building a real product. They are really trying to enable private untraceable transactions on EOS. So what we got today is basically 5% of what pEOS has promised so far. That's actually how they described it in this announcement, is that, hey, this is exciting, but remember, this is only 5% of what we're doing. And essentially what they're doing is releasing a smart contract today on the Jungle testnet. It's out there right now to implement UTXOs on EOS for any EOS token. Ooh. And a UTXO, for those that don't know, maybe you haven't been in Bitcoin for a while, is an unspent transaction output. And essentially what they're doing, a lot of people talked about Everipedia releasing UTXOs. They were working on it for EOS, and they went in detail here in this blog post about why Everipedia's model is actually mutable. It doesn't fully mimic UTXOs on Bitcoin and Monero and these other systems, and why they're building it now on the Jungle testnet. So for those that are going, okay, well, what's the significance of this? What does this mean for privacy? Essentially, this contract now enables any token that's using it to do coin join transactions. And coin join is another method where you sort of combine a bunch of transactions from people and spit out transactions to your wallet at the end. It's one privacy mechanism that exists on Bitcoin today to sort of keep your Bitcoin private, assuming you use it correctly. So this is the first piece of code released on the Jungle testnet from the pEOS team that enables those UTXOs, but then they're built in the proper way so that coin join and ring signatures and all these other things can actually be built on top of that UTXO structure. So this is super exciting. And one of the side benefits is that you can actually send a transaction using UTXOs without having an EOS account. So we talked about ORID, sort of, storing your key in a separate database. This actually allows you to send a transaction just using that public and private key. So that's pretty exciting as well. But I wanted to... Yeah, it's. I'm just excited because I think a lot of you know out there, I've been super bullish on pEOS, basically placing this bet that the team is going to deliver, that they are going to come out with this technology. So to see this code working on the Jungle testnet now sort of confirms that. It's only 5% of the whole goal that they're trying to do. But they did say an update at the end. I just want to read this word for word. With this source code release, we hope to have provided great insight to developers working on EOS smart contracts. And then in bold, I can't stress enough that this is not the pEOS tech promised in the white paper. This is 5% of it. Although this is not our wallet implementation, a special post is coming next just for that. The command line wallet tool in this repo is just for testing the UTXO contract and was never intended to be close to user friendly. So this is kind of like a bonus from the pEOS team where they saw Everipedia working on UTXOs and said, wait a minute, you're not doing it in the correct way. We're going to come in and do it in a proper way so that we can build all this privacy tech on top of it. And now it's released for free, which is something that Everipedia hasn't done yet as well. So huge congrats to the pEOS team. Another update from pEOS as well, in addition to the burn, we all saw EOS New York's post about decentralizing token contracts, where eventually the goal could be to take your token contract, right, the pEOS token, and take the permissions of that contract, which allow you to come in, make changes, update things, and actually give those permissions to the block producers by assigning it to the EOSIO account. And pEOS has announced their intention to do that as well. So once all of the tech is released on Jungle and then on mainnet and everything is working properly later this year, I believe that's scheduled for Q3 of this year, they are going to go and decentralize their token control so that they no longer have any control over the smart contract, and they will give control essentially to the network so that, if there's an emergency in the future, the BPs could go in and make a change, but ultimately no one will have control over that smart contract, and it will be truly decentralized, which is super exciting, and I hope more token contracts will follow in their footsteps.
And is their teams completely still completely anonymous, or are completely anonymous, right?
Completely anonymous, yeah.
That's a great way to legitimize and add trust to a team that's anonymous, because with anonymity, you always have that fear in the back of your mind, I don't know who these guys are. With EOS, you could update a contract. There is a risk there. So by doing that, that's the best case scenario. So I approve that. I applaud that.
Absolutely.
Speaking of teams delivering, I'll just make a quick note. Eva.coop, if you want to visit their website. They're a ride-sharing platform, just like Uber, built on top of EOS. And they actually launched. They did their official launch in the city of Montreal a couple of days ago. So there are literally people in Montreal, Canada, and Quebec, I think. Montreal, Quebec, Canada, hailing rides on a ride-sharing platform powered by EOS, where there's EOS tokens being swapped in the back end, completely abstracted from the users. And so it says, I just have the press release here. There was like a news article about it, but it was in French, and I couldn't, the Google Translate wasn't really good, but I do have a quote. And we could get into EVA on another episode. I highly recommend you look them up. We're almost running out of time here because I got to check out of this place. But the quote is, for the passenger, it's the same price, but for the driver, it's advantageous because we charge 15% of the fare compared to 25% at Uber. And that was their Darden Asufi, who's their co-founder and operations manager, that said that. And it also says here that they'll be launching in Quebec City in the end of July. So they're going to be in 2 different cities. They're rolling out, like they're doing these like test markets, and it's decentralized, but they have like this model. I'm going to do a bad job at explaining it, but to me, it's like a franchise model where basically someone picks up the franchise in a city, and then they're the ones that have to deal with like all the local regulations and stuff. And there's like a compensation model baked into it, and it's all tokenized and everything, and it's decentralized because each city would be like it's almost like a DAC, where each city's like its own organization working on top of this platform. Sorry.
No, I know he called out 25% in Uber, and maybe that's the way it is in Canada, but I know in the US that Uber actually takes 45% of the driver's fare. So essentially, EVA is taking only 33%. They're taking 66% less than Uber is taking, which is pretty cool to see.
So he was being nice to Uber, and Uber actually just IPO'd the other week, and they had like one of the worst like dates in history to run an IPO, but they still like are multi-billion-dollar companies. So like this is a huge market share here, and EVA, they're successful if they can even get a tiny sliver of that market share, and they have a revenue model, which is I love to see companies with actual business models and revenue models in place, because that's the only way you're going to guarantee longevity of all of these projects. Like you have to have a business model, and this is a great example of that. And I can't wait to learn more. We'll actually have to talk about them more on another episode, because I don't think they get enough attention. As we've mentioned them before, but we should be mentioning them more frequently, because they are boots on the ground getting shit done. But we only have a little bit of time left. So you mentioned EOS New York and their decentralizing token proposal. They always put out these. We talk about them so much. It's like every episode we're talking about an EOS New York proposal. So props to those guys for being thought leaders on this.
Absolutely.
But they put out a piece and a referendum recently, like just a couple days ago, on voter incentives. So do you want to take a stab at explaining the proposal?
So I like this a lot. Essentially, what EOS New York is proposing is, there's currently that 4% inflation that exists right now, and then there's 1% inflation that goes to paying VPs. And what EOS New York is saying is, instead of reducing that 4% inflation all the way down to 0, let's move it back to 1%, or maybe 0.5% or 0.25%. And essentially use that as a voter incentive. But what I like so much about this, and I tweeted them this, is that this is a non-biased voter incentive, which means regardless of who you vote for, regardless of which proxy you vote for, if you want to pick your own VPs, however you vote, you will earn part of this reward, assuming this is implemented. So that's what I love. I love that it's not, hey, you have to vote for these 3 VPs or this proxy in order to unlock that reward and get it. It's totally non-biased, which should just increase overall general voter participation, which I think would be an amazing thing for the network. Now, when it comes to the specifics, they had some interesting variables based on the amount of people voting relative to the total token supply would change the rate at which you receive rewards. Like the less people voting, you obviously get more rewards. The more people voting, you obviously get less rewards because it's split up amongst those people. So those specific components, I think, might be able to be simplified, where maybe it is just a flat 1% or 0.5%, and then sort of it would automatically give you more without actually having to dynamically adjust that inflation rate. For example, if only 25% of people are voting and claiming that 1% reward, it's basically like they're getting a 4% reward. Whereas if 50% of people are voting, then it's like a 2%. If 100% of people are voting, you get the flat 1%. So I think there might be a way to simplify the specifics, but overall, in terms of an idea and in terms of a non-biased voter incentive, I love the idea, and I hope something like this gets passed, assuming that reward, that incentive is still non-biased, and you can vote for any block producer you choose.
So I don't know. I don't think this, there is a referendum for this. We will put the link in the description. It only has 215,000 EOS voting for it currently, but it's got a 99% approval rate right now. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that this is a final product. I think this is more or less public opinion, like exactly what we're doing.
Exactly.
Is get public opinion and then iterate and then repropose it in a way that it just gets better with each iteration. The thing I liked is that they pointed something out that not a whole lot of people talked about. And so there is for the longest time, there was no incentive for voting, but then Rex came out recently. And Rex, if you're voting for 21 block producers and you're staking to Rex, you are getting about a 1% annual APR on your EOS that's staked, which is great for the people who aren't actually using their EOS tokens for their utility and are renting them out to other people. But what about the people or the dapps? What about the developers who actually own the EOS? They're voting, they're staking, but they're not being compensated through Rex because they're not renting their tokens, they're actually using their tokens. So what I liked about this proposal is that they specifically called that out and said, we got to take care of these guys. These are the most important people on the entire network. They're the ones using the tokens, and we want them to hold the tokens. We don't want them to just use the Rex. The Rex is great for the short term. It's super cheap, but over time the rent rates are going to go up and the ownership's going to go up. So we want the projects who are in it for the long haul and sitting on their big stacks of EOS tokens, we want them to be compensated in the same way as everyone else who's using Rex. So Definitely. This is a great way to do that because, like you said, it no matter what you're doing, right now it doesn't have any thresholds of voting. You could vote for one person, proxy, and that's all open for debate right now, and that's why we're talking about it. But I really like that. And you said you don't like the dynamic inflation, but I kind of do like it. And I guess I'll try to explain it a different way. So they just gave an example here. All of these percentages, I think, are just like rough ideas.
Examples.
Examples, and they could be modified. But the example they gave is if like there would be a 2% inflation like incentive bonus for a certain range of vote percentage. So like right now, what percentage of the mainnet's voting roughly, Rob? I know about 50% staked, but I don't know the percent voting. We could just.
I think it's about 25% of all tokens are voting right now.
So yeah, the examples they gave here is like 75% and 90%, which I think they maybe gave those examples so that we knew they weren't like serious percentages because that's
right. That would
really
be amazing.
90% would mean everyone's voting except Block.One.
Yeah, exactly.
But the example they gave is like if less people are voting, the percentage inflation's higher because they want to incentivize people to vote. And then as the voting pool gets bigger and bigger and bigger, eventually a point triggers where the compensation actually goes down. That way, the more people that vote, the less compensation there is. That way, it's like a check and balance. So like if people stop voting, we have voter apathy, and the voter pool shrinks. Then eventually, it's kind of like the mining difficulty on Bitcoin. Eventually, if the hash power shrinks, the difficulty goes down, so it's cheaper to create Bitcoins. Whereas on here, if the voting pool goes down, they get compensated more, which incentivizes more voters to come in, so that you should never hit the bottom range.
I really like that, but my point before was just that I think we can accomplish that same dynamic inflation by only having a set amount of inflation. So if that 1% inflation is, what would that be, 10 million EOS, if there are only 25% of tokens voting, those 25% of people are splitting this big pool of 10 million EOS. And as more and more people continue to vote, obviously your piece of that pool gets a little bit smaller. So you are incentivized, I think, in a simpler model like that to still vote when there are less people voting because you're going to get a bigger piece of the pie. But regardless of how it's implemented, I agree. I like that sort of I guess, tiered incentive. I just think it could be simplified by keeping the inflation the same so it doesn't have to be this dynamic thing where people are like, what's the inflation rate? Well, depending on the day, it's 1% to 3%. We could just keep it simple and still reward people when there are less people voting.
So what you're saying is, I don't know what the percentage would work out to, but let's say every block, 100 EOS are distributed across the whole network. It would be probably more than that. And you're saying that 100 EOS block, every block, that 100 EOS, and isn't a real number, would be distributed amongst all of the voters. So the less voters there are, the more EOS you would get out of that 100.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
And then, and suddenly if there are way more people voting, then you're getting a less piece, so you're a little less incentivized to vote as there's this huge voter participation. So it's still sort of that tiered voter incentive, but by keeping inflation simple and keeping it at a static rate.
I would love to keep talking about this, Rob, but I just want to point out we have never missed a single podcast in 15 or so months that we've been doing this podcast. Doesn't matter where we are or what we're doing, we do not miss a damn thing. I am literally checking out of this Airbnb in like 10 minutes, but we wanted to record it this morning because we wanted to get it edited and we wanted to get it out to everyone on time, and we're doing it like we always do it. We always deliver. Come to us May 31st in Washington, D.C. Join us there. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. Vote for Cypherglass. What else, Rob? Anything else before we close out?
I think just a big go EOS, of course, but we'll save that for the end. See if we can match it up again. I think we matched it up last week for the first time. So
we did.
I think that's all I have. Be sure to RSVP everythingeos.io/B1June if you're coming to that May event. It looks like we may be running out that entire space because so many people have RSVP'd, more than 140, and some special guests as well. So it's an event that you don't want to miss.
We do have some very special guests. I've looked over the RSVP list. We've got some big names coming, everybody. I don't want to give away any spoilers. But we got some big stuff coming in, and I guess we're plugging the event. We could plug the EOS Io Developer Courses. If you're thinking at all about building smart contracts on EOSIO, if you're already a developer, or even if you're not, it'll be a little bit harder, but if you are a developer already and you want to learn to do smart contracts, go to everythingeos.io/dev, sign up for our developer courses. We already have 314 students enrolled from like 30 different countries. It's huge.
Nice.
It's so awesome watching everyone's progress on there, but come join us. That was another cool thing. I didn't even get to mention it. I missed it in the notes. But when we were at that event, at the Carbon event, I met probably 7 different people who are enrolled in the course, and they recognize Pete, and they're like, I'm in your course. I'm learning EOS from you. Yeah.
Nice. That's so awesome. I love that real developers are out there actually using this course that will then likely go on to build real EOS dapps. So it'll be interesting, a couple months, maybe a year from now, to see like, oh wow, that dapp that's launching, those developers actually took the Everything EOS Developer course, and that's how they were able to build it. So I just love it. I think it's great.
Always delivering here at Everything EOS, but I literally got to go. So let's try to time it up. Once again, I'm Zack Gall.
I'm Rob Finch, and this is Everything
EOS.
Go EOS!
EOS!
Woo! See you next week.
All right.